Welcome back to another episode of the Pretty Profesh podcast. I'm Sarah Voris here with Haley. Gosh, I'm going to do it again. I want to combine them as a person. Haley Westfall and Sarah Bell. Today we're talking about some motherhood and entrepreneurialism.
Yes.
How about motherhood and business? Entrepreneurialism. It's totally a word.
Should I Google it?
Entrepreneurship?
No,
I'm Googling
entrepreneurialism.
it. Hold, please.
Okay.
Google.
Aeronautical.
I don't even know how to spell
That was our one from 2 episodes ago. Aerospace and aeronautical.
It's a word. You win.
Entrepreneurialism.
I mean, are you really coming at me? That is
The
my job.
copywriter.
I mean, you thought aeronautical.
I
was
still
wrong.
think
I think we looked that up too.
aeronautical is a word.
Anyways.
Okay, whatever.
I digress.
Since we're talking about motherhood and entrepreneurialism, I wanted to tell you, because my children are ridiculous. Langley, who's my youngest, who we have not let them watch scary stuff because even the hint of scary stuff makes them come in our bed at 2 a.m. and I am not about that life.
Nope.
And so
Not with full grown, full
humans.
size
No,
children.
no.
It's not a
She's
2-year-old.
almost 9 years old. Yeah, I mean, it's different. She's still, to this day, both her and Gibson, which is kind of funny because he's on the top bunk. If they have a bad dream, they will come into our room. This is not even the story I was going to tell you. They will come into our room, always on my side. Mom. And I wake up like a crazy person, and they're like, I had a bad dream. I'm like, okay. I give them a hug, and I walk them back to their room.
Yeah.
And I'm like,
All is well.
what did you I mean, I guess it's just safety, and it's wonderful that they feel that way. But I'm like, how did this? Gibson will climb down from the top of his bunk bed, walk to our room, and then
So much effort.
Yes. I'm like, ugh. Anywho, not the story. My story is that we don't watch creepy things because creepy things scare. I don't like them anyway, but dog. But it makes them get up, and I don't like it. So we've kind of sheltered them from that. But Langley has been into it lately. I started around Halloween, and she's like, I just want to watch all the creepy movies, and I'm like, absolutely not. But she started writing fan fiction of Chucky stories.
A movie she hasn't seen.
A movie she's
clarify.
never seen of Chucky stories. Yeah. And she's just a super creepo and will just all the time be like, I think a doll's gonna come get you. Just she's so weird. I don't even know.
Why are they so weird?
So
freaking weird.
Yeah. They're bizarros. So welcome to entrepreneurialism.
Welcome. Motherhood is weird.
Motherhood and business.
Yes. So just to give a little context, we are all mothers. So I feel that we can at least speak to this somewhat, although I never will claim to be an expert because it is an ever evolving learning curve, I feel like.
Amen, sister.
And we have a little bit of a split with a little bit of older kids, a little bit of younger kids, kind of everything in between, boys, girls, all the things. So we wanted to talk a little bit about balancing motherhood and obviously being a decent significant other also is probably relevant, and entrepreneurship because
Entrepreneurialism.
it can be hard, honestly. And I struggle with this probably every day. And so I wanted to talk a little bit about that. So the first thing I want to talk about is this kind of mindset of living in the divide. So I don't know about you guys, but anytime that I think about anything kind of describing myself as a human being, it kind of goes with a role. It's associated with a role of some sort. It's associated with me as a mom, with me as a friend, with me as a wife, a business owner, everything in between. And sometimes I feel like we guilt ourselves into thinking that we have to choose, right? So we're kind of living in that divide of can I be a mom, but I will also be this thing, and I'll also be this thing, instead of having that both and mentality. I can be a mom who's present, who loves her kids and does all the mom things, and I can also have a thriving business. So I was curious from a balance perspective, how do you guys feel about that? Do you feel kind of a pull where sometimes you wonder if you can do both, or do you feel like you have a good balance?
Well, Instagram tells me that I can have all the things and that my life can be perfect. So I feel like it's a constant juggling act of reminding myself that it's possible to do both, but that I think where I struggle is that moment by moment, it doesn't necessarily look like that. So when I'm like on the floor doing Legos, it's okay that my head is like, oh, I really wanted to send that email, or, you know, like, but so it doesn't necessarily mean that like at the same time I have to be doing both. I can be successful. Like it's a successful, creative, great decision for my business for me to take time with my kids, but it's also like really great for my kids for me to do the other things too. And I know we'll talk about that, but like I have to remember that just because I'm doing one doesn't mean necessarily that I'm like pulling away from the other. It can,
Sure.
but like it doesn't have to be.
You
It's
don't
not
have to
mutually
choose
exclusive.
one or the other as like in its entirety. What about you?
It feels like a constant moving target for me, honestly. And it feels like there's different criteria that's always shifting, right? So there are some days where I'm like, well, I feel like my child, like I must not be a good mom because my child like threw a tantrum. Well, like he's 4 and that's going to happen. But then also if he like has a really great day, then I'm not like, oh, I'm a really great mom because he had a really great day. I'm like, I just had a great day, right? Like, and I just don't apply those things evenly. And I'm currently in this weird season where I have a lot of guilt around not homeschooling my kids because I feel like, well, number one, homeschooling after COVID is so much more accessible now. And I think that's fantastic. Like, I think it is incredible that families have this option to spend more time together.
Yeah.
And I sit there listening to all the moms who are incredible being like, I just felt like we needed more time as a family and it needed to be slower and they needed to play more. And, you know, we're still going so hard in the academics, but they're like, they have everything. And I'm like, well, my kids still go to school. So it's like a really hard thing for me to not equate like number of hours spent with my children to like being a good mom.
Yes.
So all that to say, like, I don't feel like I do it well, but I think that's just the struggle that we all face as business owners who also have families.
I think it's interesting because I think we're always like comparing, right?
Yeah.
Like what's the right choice? And I think just even in that conversation just now, like Sarah was saying, you know, I'm better if I have both. And there's some people that are like, this is my mission field.
Yes.
Like that is my job. And that is like where I want to pour all my time and energy. And so I think it's really easy to get caught up in that kind of comparison culture of trying to figure it out. I was just telling someone today actually that her kiddo has never been in like a daycare environment or anything like that. And coming from the corporate world, I mean, that's all my kids have ever known. My kids have always been away from the home during the day. And I was telling her about how I feel so lucky that my kids are still all in some form of schooling, but I can like not be the last mom that picks them up every day. Where like in my prior life, my middle daughter, I would go to pick her up from preschool and probably 3 days a week at least, she was the last kid every time because I was hustling from my corporate job. So I think we have to give ourselves grace too, that like we need to find what the best balance is for us just as much for them, right? And like, what does that look like for you? It doesn't make one good, bad, or indifferent. You may decide in this season of life, I have really small kids, I want to build my own business because I only want to work 10 hours a week.
Yeah, that's where I was.
Right. And so it's like, that's great. Like you wanted something for you. And so you create that space and you have the autonomy and freedom to do that, which I think is great. I was at a retreat that we hosted last fall. I'm like, when was
September?
it? Yeah, last fall. And we walked through this exercise that I kind of talked about earlier about your identity not being found in a role. And I would really challenge you guys to do that sometime. Like write down the things that identify you as a human, as you like at your core, and really try to find something that isn't associated with a role, right? It's not associated with your role as a mom, as a wife, as a business owner, as a Christian, as a friend, as a whatever those things are. Can you do it? Because I couldn't. I literally
still can't do it.
Not a single person in the room could write one thing down. And it really, really is challenging. But I think it just goes back to that we put so much weight in our roles that we fill that we just have to be really careful about making sure that we're putting that value in the right buckets in like the right quantities, if that makes sense for us, like whatever feels good for you as an individual. I think another big thing is like guilt. And so kind of how Sarah was alluding to earlier, like figuring out what that looks like. And like, it's okay to be playing Legos with your kid on the floor and be thinking about something else that you need to do. You're also consciously making a choice to not do that at this exact moment and to play Legos with your kid on the floor. So I think we have to make sure that guilt isn't our reason, right? Like, I'm not playing with my kid because I feel bad. Like, I'm playing with my kid because I want to, or because I have the time freedom to do that when they get home from school and I'm here and I'm able to do that with them. So I think that not allowing guilt to be the driver is really huge, to allow yourself to be able to like coexist in those worlds. One of the things, and I would love to hear from you guys on kind of setting you and your family up for success, because I'm a firm believer that every household thrives differently and the dynamics are different, and what's going to work best for you based on, you know, your schedule, routine, your kids' personalities, all the things in between. So I think one of the big things for me that was a big struggle, my kids are 9, 6, and 3. So 2 of them are in elementary school and one of them is now recently, as of this week, in preschool. But last summer was my first summer in entrepreneurship that I had 2 kids that were home all summer, because previously my middle daughter was in an in-home daycare that was year round. So I had never had more than one of them home for the summer, which was a wild journey. So I think it's just really interesting that we have to try to be like thinking on our feet about how to make that work. So before I dive into kind of some of the stuff that I do, what do you guys feel like if you had to pick your top 2 ways that you kind of set up you and your family for success with being a mom and a wife as well as a business owner? What do you think those would be?
I try to be really clear in what my expectations for the day are. Not like, you will behave, because they do that. I'm just kidding. But like at the beginning of the day, if my kids are home, I want them almost like when they, you know, if you think about when their kids are really little and you tell them like, and then we're going to go to the pool and then we're going to go to the library. So like you can help with all those transitions and like constantly remind them of what you're doing. I really like to set that up so that I'm like, hey, I've got 2 hours of calls in the morning and then we're going to have lunch together. And then after that, I'll have a little bit of time where we can do this. Or if you want to go to the library, we can do that. But when we get back and after 2 o'clock, I'm going to have to work until dinner time. And then at dinner time, we're going to be able to watch a movie after dinner, or whatever it is. So I feel like that helps, so that when they feel like they need to come to me a million times, which they still do. And then I remind them, hey, if this is an emergency, I'm happy to help, which they think an emergency is like, can you sharpen this pencil?
I was like, share how old your kids are too, just for reference.
So mine are almost 14, 10, and almost 9. So they are definitely way more self-sufficient than like little, for sure. And so that looks different for me than it will look like for you guys. But there's like, it's a little bit easier for them to be like, oh, I'm going to go play Legos for a couple hours while mom does this. And then knowing that I'm going to be able to show her all of my drawings or all of my whatever. I mean, they for sure still come and want to share all of those things. But then if I remind them like, I totally want to see that. Let's
I'm gonna put a pin in
this. Let's circle back and in a couple hours, or like I really want to be able to pay attention, but I can't right now because I'm doing this. But like, and then letting them know, and then actually following through, and like even if they don't remember, me coming back to it and being like, hey, I really want to see what you did while I was working.
Yeah.
So I think for me that's big, like just giving them the expectations of the day, and sometimes it'll look different, and that's okay. But like trying to be clear on what that'll be.
Okay.
So, I mean, when the kids are home all day, all bets are off for me. Like my kids are 6 and 4 and they're both boys. And so I am not yet at the place that Sarah is where I can like lay out the day and set expectations. So it's just kind of a free for all. But when the kids are in school or if they are somewhere else other than our house, I'm trying to be better about this and just be really intentional about my time. Kind of, we were talking about this before we started the podcast. But I say no to almost everything that happens after hours, specifically after dinner. And we make sure on weekdays that there's at least one parent home. So if I have to go to like a networking event, I get to go to a networking event, if we rephrase that. I make sure that my husband is home, and then I make sure that I'm not doing that like 4 times a week, so that my husband has a really demanding job and it's not flexible at all. He doesn't work from home. He works in construction. And so it's also not fair to him for me to be like, hey, I'm going to peace out 4 days, 4 nights this week.
As soon as you get home.
Exactly. When you're like really exhausted. And then you have to like watch the kids, which obviously
So I have no idea what to eat for dinner.
Right?
Fun
Right?
with that.
Do everything. I'll be home at 10.
Yes. Bye.
It's a balance, and balancing being a good mom and a good partner is really important to me, as I'm sure it is for most of our listeners and us as well. Yeah. But I'm trying to be really intentional about those time boundaries, and then I'm trying to be really intentional about the times that I do have during the day. So I shared with Sarah and Haley that I'm trying to be better about my notifications and not just like getting distracted each time I get a notification. I have to sit down and get all this stuff done if I'm going to make it happen so that I can be free at night.
Yeah.
Right. So I time block. I'm really intentional about time blocking. I time block by client so that I know like the amount of time I'm spending on each project so that it doesn't go like 10 hours over what it was supposed to. I know if I'm getting close to like the end of this time that, you know, I need to be more efficient or cut out some of the distractions. So that's my main focus for 2023 is like doing less, but also doing more, if that makes sense.
It's like, amen.
Right?
This is my mantra for 2023.
We love it.
Yes. I think one thing that kind of to go back earlier about the summer, I think understanding that there's seasons that you're going to have to pivot a little bit. So kind of how Sarah was alluding to with like, when, you know, when the kids are home and her kids are 6 and 4, like all bets are off, right? I'm kind of in like a middle of the road where like Sarah Voris was saying with the expectations, I will set those expectations with my kids, especially my 6 and 9-year-old, where I will say, I have a call. And it's funny because my 9-year-old, like days she's home, she'll be like, do you have any calls today? What time? And I'm like,
so
okay.
mature.
Right. I was like, this is what's going on. But also finding that balance. So like in times that are seasonal, whether it's holiday break or it's spring break or it's summer, like I work a lot at night during those times. Is it my favorite? No. Do I want to be screaming at my kids all day to be quiet so I can focus? Also no.
Yeah.
So I tried the latter first, doing it during the day anyways, and just dealing with it. And it was awful. So not to say that I don't do anything during the day,
Sure.
but like things that I still have to take meetings and stuff during the day, but things that I can do whenever, whether that's, you know, kind of building out like strategic blueprints for clients or doing content creation or doing things like that I can do at any time. I'm really trying to be intentional about like, what can that look like and how can it be flexible so I can be present for them? Not only because obviously I want to spend time with them, but like, I don't want to be triggered by their behavior because then I'm in a mood and I'm not showing up as my best self for my business either.
Sure.
Or for them.
And how do you communicate this with your husband at night?
Yeah, that is interesting. No, again, so my husband works a corporate job. He is out of the home. I mean, occasionally he works from home if he needs to, but traditionally he goes into the office. So I'm the one doing, you know, most of the drop-offs and pickups and things like that. And so we have a shared Google Calendar.
Very sexy.
Yes. Meow.
So romantic.
And I have a funny story actually, but I'll tell that in a
wait.
minute. But we have a shared Google Calendar.
Keep in mind, we have a 13-year-old editor. if it's the story that I'm thinking of.
I will keep it edited. And so I will put things on the calendar that are things he needs to know about. Like I used to put all my stuff that was during the day, and I'm like, he literally could give 2 craps. Like he does not care that I have like a lash fill at this time on a Tuesday morning. But I will put things that are after hours. So to Sarah's point, especially with running the community, I do a lot of like networking events and stuff like that. And so I'm trying to be really intentional about choosing ones with purpose, not just because like I enjoy them like a freak.
Haley's favorite hobby.
And, but I try to pick them with purpose and also not make it excessive. So like if I'm going to do a couple a month, I'll spread them out. I make sure they don't like all happen in the same week if at all possible, and just give as much notice as possible. And I'll ask like, what do you need from me? And in order to make it like as not painful as possible, that's not what I want to say, but just like as seamless as possible.
Okay,
like, how can I help? You want me to make something for dinner?
Yeah. I like that question.
Yeah. Like, can I do, maybe I'll do baths like right after school, which like maybe doesn't seem ideal, but like then that's one less thing done.
No, that's
My
great.
kids have an excessive amount of hair between the 3 of
They have so
them
much hair.
that they're all girls. So like bath and showers is not like a quick happening for us. So like, can I do that? Or, you know, whatever that looks like, so that it's like that partnership mentality to make sure that I am not just like, bye loser, see you later, best of luck. And my husband's great. He's extremely self-sufficient. So most of the time he's like, I don't,
you were going to say self-centered.
no, self-sufficient.
AJ, we hope you're not listening.
Yeah. He most of the time, honestly, he's like, I'm good. Like he doesn't need anything, but I think like asking is important.
It just helps set them up for success.
Yeah. And I think too, like making sure that just the communication is super, super clear. I will keep this very brief, but because he has now bought into my Google Calendar, he will put obscure items that he thinks are absolutely hilarious as appointments on my calendar. I will let you use your imagination as to what those things are, but it is just wildly
Decline
funny when I find them. And I was like, what is this? And he calls them like obscure titles, like business meeting.
My favorite that was like, it was like 5 minutes long on your calendar.
It's like 7 minutes. Business meeting, 7 minutes. And I'm like, goodbye, get out, unavailable.
Really reaching for the stars there.
Schedule conflict. The other thing real quick I wanted to note was this mindset of filling your kids' cups first. And this was actually a piece of advice that my business partner for the community that I run had given me last year when it was my first year with 2 kids home. And she has 2 girls as well. And she's like, one of the things that I found that is a total game changer for me is making sure their cup is filled first. So like if they're asking to do something or they're wanting to do something, they're needing something from me, making sure that that is like checked off my list and like I'm fully present for that on the front end of the day, because they feel, number one, prioritized, but also like they're kind of like need bucket. That's not what I want to say. Words are hard. Like their cups are filled. Like they feel like, oh, like mom did something fun with me. And like, no offense, they don't want to hang out with you that much either. Like they don't necessarily want 24/7 attention, especially with the kids that are a little bit older. Cause then they're like, okay, like
my 13-year-old wants to hang out with me all the time.
Do you though?
Thanks for editing the podcast.
Right. But there comes a point in time where they're like, they just need enough. Right. Yeah. And so I think just making that top of mind priority of like, I'm going to do that first because I want to make sure I don't overlook it more than anything else is super important. The last thing that I wanted to touch on is our intentions and just regularly checking in with them. So I think about that like scale, right? Where there's like 2 sides of the scale and like, are they in balance with one another? And so I think it's really important to make sure like you're really clear on your intentions for your home and your presence within your home and how your home runs and all of those things. And then your intentions for your business. Do they conflict with one another or are they in alignment? And I was using this example earlier. So if my, goal for my business is I am going to manage 20 clients at one time. That's like my target of like how many clients I'm going to manage.
Just based on pure money wanting to come in.
Randomness. Okay. I'm going to manage 20 clients because that's what feels good to me in this moment. But then my intentions for my home are I am going to drop my kids off and pick them up from school every day. I'm going to take them to all their extracurriculars. I'm going to do all of their homework. I'm going to only be able to work.
Do your kids'
Don't do your kids' homework.
Well, you know what I mean. Do it with them. I'm only going to be able, in theory, to work on my business solidly for 3 hours a day. Like those things are probably not in alignment with each other. So what do you guys think about like how frequently are you kind of looking at that? I know you were talking about like a moving target earlier, but like how frequently are you like checking in with yourself and keeping that front of mind? Like is one side weighing higher than the other and like needing to make some adjustments?
I mean, I feel like I do it all the time. The problem is that I'm like the world's worst estimator. Like those games where you like guess the amount of jelly beans. It's, like I'm always so far off. It's not even funny. Where they're like, "Were you looking at the jar at all?" So I'll be like, "Well, this is my why. Like I started my business for more freedom to be with my kids and to be with my family, and also to support my husband in his demanding job." And so I'll be like, "Well, that's great. That means I can take on like X amount of clients because there'll be X amount of hours for this." And then I've like wildly underestimated the amount of hours, right? Or just, like things happen, projects get delayed and all that. So my response to that was scaling my business, because if I have somebody that I can hand stuff off to, even if that means I lose dollars, like my why is freedom. And so I make choices in that direction, if that makes sense. And at least I have like a go-to tool if I feel like I'm out of balance. So that's the case for me.
Do you think when you set up your, especially like your business goals, because we're in a new year and things may look a little bit different, how does that look as far as you find yourself in seasons where you're like, okay, one is going to weigh a little heavier than another temporarily, and I'm okay with it, but I'm also like aware, like it's intentional.
Yeah, I think that if I can set some sort of end date or goal to get it back into balance, that helps a lot. So if it's like, I know that I have these 4 projects running late, that means it's going to bleed over into next month. And, you know, that's just going to be a big push on my end, but I'm not going to book as many clients for this, or I'm going to only book clients for this like way more scalable service until I get back on track. And that once again means that sometimes I have to sacrifice some income, but to me it's worth it. And it makes it so that I still love what I do, which is also really important to me.
Yeah.
I feel like I have to look at it not from like a work-life balance, but like work-life harmony, because it's never going to be equal, right? If I'm spending 5 hours on a project, that doesn't mean, nor should it mean, that I am going to go spend 5 hours with my kids.
Right. Yes.
And, or vice versa. We spend.
Or yourself.
Or, yes, exactly.
I'm sleeping 8 hours, therefore.
Yes.
Check. Self-time.
Self-care. Done. You know, like if you're at a soccer tournament all day on Saturday, that doesn't mean that then you have to sacrifice your entire Sunday because you're like, oh shoot, I spent all that time.
Right.
So I feel like it's like a harmony in like music situation, that like there's things that come louder, there's things that come softer, but they like work together well. And so there's times that I'm working heavier on my business. And so then those hours with my kids are going to be, less, but I try to make them more intentional, like rather than just like, oh, we are going to follow like the routine that I know where I'm getting quality time. I hope you like my dog.
She is drinking out of my water bottle. I'm like holding her head to try and stop her from licking the straw.
Remy, come here.
The ship has sailed.
Remy.
Pretty
profesh. We are killing it. Sorry, guys.
I love her, but boundaries.
Girlfriend. I'm sorry.
It's all good.
Anyway, so I feel like if I know that I'm going to be spending a lot of time with my business, then trying to make sure that like, oh, those moments aren't going to just like be passive with my kids. Like not that Legos and things like that aren't good, but like being very intentional. Like what would mean the most to my kids when I know they're only getting like 30 minutes today? Like what would be the biggest win for them? And it's probably going to be different for every kid, which is kind of annoying.
Could y'all get on the same page?
That'd be really great. So I think for me, it's like less about like, let's make sure that everything's equal, because I tell my kids all the time, like life's not fair.
Yeah.
Just sorry that you got less ice cream, but that's what it is.
Yeah,
so
right.
go to bed.
Right.
So I think I just have to look at it a little, that helps me to know like it's not ever going to be totally balanced across the scale.
Yeah, for sure. I think one of the things that is really interesting and terrifying at the same time is like the concept that our kids are always watching. Always. I was like, I envision sometimes when you were talking earlier about Gibson coming into your room when he's scared, sometimes I'll like roll over and I feel like it's like a Children of the Corn scene. And one of my kids is just standing on the side of my bed with their beady eyes, just staring at me, not saying a word. And I'm like, do you need something? And they're like, I have to pee. And I'm like, okay, well, you passed 2 bathrooms to get here. So can I help you? But just that your kids are always watching. So like, I don't know, I would love to hear, and I'll share first, but how to create a positive mindset around your work for your kids. And I think this can be, you know, relevant no matter what you do for work, but specifically in the entrepreneurialism space. Like they do see you, especially if you're working out of your home, they see you working far more than they would if you were going to the office, right? Like our husbands. Yes. And so how do we create that mindset of like, the example I used was, you know, rather than mommy's always working, like instead of that mindset of them thinking like mommy's always working, how do we shift that perspective to say like, you know, mommy is worthy of chasing her dreams because they're important to her, or mommy is working super hard to build something special so she can help other people. So like, what are some habits that you can do, or maybe you do now, or what you could do better in order to kind of convey that message? So for me, I laugh because my kids will be like, what are you doing, Mom? And I'm like, working. And they're like, clap culture or West Collective? And it's like cute to hear them say, and they're like, are you podcasting today? But I think a lot of it is like talking to them about work in a way, not just like mom has a meeting or mom has this, but like explaining to them truly what you do. I laugh because when I worked in corporate, I would give my husband a hard time all the time because he could not articulate what I did for a living, like to anyone. And he's like, can you explain it to me again? I'm like, literally, it's been the same thing for like 20 years in the same sphere. But I think just really explaining to them, like, you know, the fun things and the things that they can understand, kind of to go back to your point earlier about like that transformation. So like, how did I help someone today? Or, you know, what is a project that I'm working on, and like, what is it going to do for people? And really like bringing them into the process of like seeing things and just exposing them to it. I just try, I mean, my 3-year-old's like, I don't care. Like, can I have a snack? But my 6 and 9-year-old, they're very aware. And so that's one thing that I mean, am constantly doing, is just trying to explain to them, like, I do this so that I can have the freedom to like volunteer at your school. Like, remember when mommy had her old job and like she could never go on field trips, or she could never do this? Like, mommy's working at night so that we can go to the children's museum on your day off from school tomorrow, or whatever the case may be. And just really like, I just think over communicating in a way.
I'm trying to be better about this. I mean, now that my kids are older, it matters more. Like you were saying, when they were 2, they were just like, but I want to watch a show.
Like,
and I'm like, okay, right. And I shared this with you guys earlier. I have another job at a fitness studio nearby, and the previous owner of the studio once said something to the effect, I could never say it as eloquently as she said it, but it was something to the effect of, when her and her boys like start the morning, she says to them, like, hey, we're going to go off and do our individual things that make us better and that make the world a better place. And then we're going to reconvene at home at night and like celebrate everything we did and like be a family. And I just loved like her mindset around it. Like, we're going to go be our best selves and learn how to be, and then come back and be our best self as a family. And I really do believe that work is sacred. Like, I believe that we as people crave meaningful work. And I believe that a lot of us left our 9-to-5 corporate jobs to find whatever that meaningful work was. And I believe it makes the world a better place when we find it, right? And so if I'm like, hey, these are the gifts that mommy's been given, like mommy really is good at this and it kind of makes me come alive when I do this, and I'm going to use it to help other people in their businesses, and you're going to go to school and you're going to learn skills that help make you better and also help make it so that you can make the world a better place. And then we're going to come home at night and we're going to talk about those things and how we did our best today and all the things that we were called to do.
I love that.
So that is what I'm trying to move towards. My youngest is 4, so it's still a little bit of a challenge, but we're getting there, hopefully.
We have a kind of interesting, because my husband has worked in a full-time job, like outside the home for as long as we've been married, until the last year and a half. And now he works full-time from home. And so it's been interesting. I've always had like something I've done, but I've always been in the home, whether I had a job or had a business or not. And so they've kind of seen both sides of the coin, and they've seen when daddy was gone and he worked all the time and we couldn't take any summer vacations because daddy was gone all freaking summer. And then now where they get him all the time, and he gets to pick up and drop off most days. And then he does travel a little bit for work. And so it's interesting that when like my youngest is the more needy of all of my children, and emotionally, physically, all of the things.
Capacities.
The one who likes horror movies?
Yes. Let's snuggle and watch Jackie. So whenever he's gone, like she has a hard time, like, oh, I just miss daddy. Why does daddy have to go? And I'm like, but then I remind her, remember when we couldn't do this because daddy was working, or because like kind of reminding her the journey that we've been on. Like daddy only really has to travel once a month. So he's gone 2 days. I mean, right now he's gone for a week, but that's separate. That's for fun things. But before he wasn't able to do those things because, and he would miss this and he would miss that. So I'm trying to use that same mentality when they come to me and are like, why are you working so much? And I'm like, listen, first of all, I have to like check. Okay. Am I doing,
Yes.
Is what I'm spending my time on actually necessary?
Yeah.
Like Langley came in when I was supposed to be working yesterday, and she's like, Hey, Remy. Well, okay. Don't knock things down. Thanks, dog.
The dog almost took down our whole setup.
Where she said something like, you were supposed to come do this with me when you were done working, and you're not even working. Like, she came into the office.
It's like, you're on Instagram.
Yeah, she was like, you're looking at your phone, which I really was, like, looking for something on my phone specifically. But she's like, you don't even look like you're working. And I was like, okay, listen, bring it down. And so I got to have the conversation of, like, it might not look like I'm working, but it's like that reel that's like, I promise I'm working.
Yeah.
I have that conversation all the time. But to then kind of help remind her, like, I'm going to be, this is my time. I'm almost done. I am going to come find you as soon as I'm done, because I can't wait to hear your never ending story about Chucky.
Can't wait to cook out of your Harry Potter cookbook.
Yes, yeah. Wingardium Leviosa. We are Harry Potter nerds.
Let's go.
But like reminding her, like I loved this morning that we got to sit and read together. And I loved that time that then we got to have lunch together, and like trying to remind her that I'm really not working that much. Like, you actually get a lot of me. Not in a way that's like manipulative, but like just kind of going almost in that like clear expectations that I give them at the beginning of the day, like reminding like, no, this is what we got to do. Wasn't it so fun when we got to do this? And I can't wait until the next time that we get to do that. I just have to finish up these things. Or no, I have 2 more hours of work that I could do. But every time you interrupt me, that time gets longer.
Right.
Yeah.
Which they're at least at that age that I'm like, you have to stop. You have to just let me do this and love you, but I need you to be gone. So that day will come when they actually,
I can't wait.
Listen.
What a great life skill for them to learn, though. Hey, there's stuff I have to do that is not necessarily fun and exciting, but also like I can look forward to this thing later on that I can do. And that balance is a really great thing for your kids to be learning.
Thank you.
So,
I think that's great little mindset reframing. There we go.
I was like, save it for later. I think too, to your point of like making the time really intentional and not just like, not that watching TV is not intentional.
Because Haley doesn't watch TV. She's going to call us out on it.
Like,
are
your kids going to look back and they're going to be like, remember that one time when mom watched TV with me? Right? Like, it's really interesting. And I know we're probably running long, but my husband, one of the things we were just talking about over the holidays, we took the kids to Christmas at the Princess, which if you're not local, that means literally nothing to you. But it's a Christmas event that they have here at a big resort. And it's just like this fun, magical experience. Also not cheap. And we were walking around with the kids talking, and my sister and my brother-in-law and her family were there. And he's like, I really want to like do more stuff as a family, like the 5 of us together. And he's like, but it's so freaking expensive. Like for us to go even to dinner is like $100. And so he's like, we need to figure out ways to like spend intentional time with them that are not a fortune. So I actually just ordered, this is not sponsored by the way, but I actually just ordered, I think I was telling you, this adventure challenge book, the family edition. My husband and I have the couples edition with like date night things, but one thing I liked about it is it was like even the most expensive thing I think was $50, and that was like the most, but they ranged from free to 50. And like when I was looking at the things, like one of them's like build an obstacle course in your house and race each other through it, like, or in your backyard or whatever. And it was just like fun things that you can do with your kids to create those memories that even if you only had an hour, like they're going to go to school and they're going to be like, bro, my parents built the sickest obstacle course in my house and I whooped all my siblings. Those are the things that they're going to talk about. And so I think just because it's intentional doesn't mean it has to feel burdensome. It can still be fun and purposeful, and still, even if it isn't a ton of time, be like those memory makers with them.
I'm not going to lie. Building an obstacle course does sound burdensome.
We do it together.
I know.
5 of you, and your kids are big. You could do it. It would be just fine.
My kids would definitely be the productive part of it. It would not be just me doing it.
Right. I mean, they're like little engineers.
Yes.
It's going to be great. So anyways, all that's to say, motherhood is hard AF. And you don't have to choose. I think is the overarching theme. Like, hopefully this at the very least provided you with some semblance of peace, knowing that you're not the only one that's probably struggling with it. And hopefully at least one tool that you can incorporate into your daily, weekly, monthly routine to make it feel a little more purposeful.
Yeah. Love it. Thanks guys. Thanks for sharing. Thanks. See you next time. Thanks for being here.
Bye.